Hello and welcome to Ian's 10-minute art talk, or the art world sorted in 10 minutes by Ian. Right, now, sheet of paper here, 3 columns, one big column in the middle, other column here. Abstract art, pure abstract art in this column. Nothing recognisable. Some names here: Kandinsky, Mondrian, Albers, Rothko, Pollock, Innes. My main criticism with this type of art is that it's not meaningful. There's no sign of any people, trees, houses. There's nothing that I can immediately connect with or relate to. It's a bit remote. What is meaningful art? This is a drawing by a 5-year-old of his doggy. He made quite a few of these pictures of his doggy actually, and they all look pretty much the same, but they're all meaningful. They're warm. He loves his doggy. What's not meaningful? Here's a Kandinsky. Geometric shapes. A bit remote, cool, intellectual, a bit too clever maybe. And certainly not meaningful, not to me anyway. If I take a pin to the Jawlensky, it means nothing. But if I take a pin to the wee doggy, ouch! You can almost feel the pain. Now, that's just to emphasise that there's a big difference between art that is meaningful and art that isn't meaningful. And the risk is that if it's not meaningful, it's boring. And what you can end up with this art, and in my opinion you always do end up with, is just pretty patterns. Even with people like Jackson Pollock, it's very nice patterns, but it lacks something. There's something missing. I can't really relate to it. You know, I'm a human. Art's a kind of primitive thing. We draw as children. We don't draw abstract pictures when we're children, unless we're making pattern for a designing a dress or something like that. But a bit boring, a bit remote. If I had to paint purely abstract art, I'd get bored in about half an hour. Now, what I've got on the other side here, on the other side, where's my paintbrush? On this side, let's call them realistic art. So this probably began back in the Renaissance, people like Leonardo and Michelangelo. Carried on later with Rembrandt, Ingres. Then we had photography. So I could understand people making realistic paintings then, before photography, but since photography, people like Close, Warhol, Gilbert and George, there's plenty of them. But my problem with this type of art after photography would be that it's everywhere. And in fact, reality is everywhere. Look out the window, it's reality. Take a photograph, click, you've got a perfectly realistic picture. Make a body mould, you've got a perfectly realistic sculpture. Anybody can do it now, and anyway, artistically it's worthless. This was very skillful. I mean, I can understand why people would want to make realistic paintings then, like the Mona Lisa and whatnot. Very skillful, admirable, but now, realism in art, artistically worthless. Now, I include conceptual art here, people like Chapman Brothers, Hirst, Simon Starling, because what we get exhibited in the gallery from them is, I think I'm right in saying, always, or very nearly always, realistic. Or even real, like the shark. They may each have their own subject that they hang their hat on. Like the Chapman Brothers would be gore, Hirst would be death, Starling would be how we make things. But what we see in the gallery would be chopped up bodies that would be sculptures made with body moulds. A shark or a skull, which are either very realistic or real. So they'd be like the ready-mades of Duchamp. And Simon Starling, a shed or tools that we make chairs with. What we get in the gallery is reality. And as I said already, reality is artistically worthless. Then you're just left with these artists who tell me the idea. Well, some quirky idea, it's not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. Now, the middle column. In between the two, in between realistic art and purely abstract art, abstracted reality. This type of art began with primitive art. I think I'm right in saying that all primitive art would fit into this category here. So it began with primitive art, then after the Renaissance and the realistic art of the Renaissance and its effect on the next 2 or 3 centuries, it was later reinvented by Cézanne and Van Gogh. Well done. And carried on in the 20th century with people like Jablinski, Goncharova, Picasso, Matisse, Moore, Kossoff, Klee, Hockney, Haring. There's plenty more. I could mention a lot of big names that would fit well in this section here, because this is the section where it all happens. This is when you mix these two together, and if you do it well, the sparks fly, you make your own style, lift off, now we're talking, this is art. It's exciting, it's meaningful. I can recognise shapes, people, things, houses, trees, but it also has the freedom of abstraction, which is a great thing. This lacks the freedom of abstraction, this lacks the meaningfulness. So there's endless possibilities in the middle here. That's why most of the big names in art, especially from the 20th century, would fit in here. It's very difficult to do this type of art here, very difficult. Much more so than these other two columns. Much more difficult to kind of carve out your own style. And of course I would say that's why these people here and here, like Innes, Pollock, Rothko, these conceptual artists, Gilbert and George, Warhol, Close, that's why they don't do this art, because they can't. Not because they don't want to, because they can't. This is the only type of art that I'm an artist myself, you might have guessed. It's the only type of art that I'm interested in, and it's the only type of art I ever have been interested in. I get bored stupid with realism, and I get bored stupid with pure abstraction. They've got no interest in me whatsoever. But when you put the two together and create a style of your own, boom. Now, one way to think about it would be, could I do the next Callum Innes? So his paintings are usually paint dribbled over a canvas, quite carefully, skillfully. But I think I could give that a good shot. I've messed around with paint quite a lot. You know, I think in fact you might struggle to tell which picture was the Innes and which one was mine. What about these people here, the Chapman brothers? Well, you know, I could think of some fairly horrific subject, make a few body moulds, arrange them together and put them in the gallery, and everybody would say, wow, these Chapman boys, they've done it again, they really know how to shock people. I think I could do that. Could I do the next Picasso? No. Could I do the next Hockney, Klee, Kossoff? No, no, no. So, to sum up, boring, boring, fantastic. And this, forget about this. This is not the future of art here, conceptual art. I think actually conceptual art was born, lived and died with Marcel Duchamp. Ready-mades in the gallery, that's all it is. Forget about this, it's boring. Forget about that, it's boring. This is the future for art. I rest my case.